what if everything you trust in the financial system is slowly breaking apart right in front of you, but most people still cannot see it yet? And while the majority keeps following old systems, a small group is quietly preparing for a massive shift that could completely change how money moves around the world. And today, we are going to explore why some serious voices are warning about a collapse, and why one particular digital asset is being seen as a potential solution before it is too late. Right now, there is a growing conversation happening in the financial world, and it is not coming from random people on the internet, but from experienced investors and analysts who have been watching global markets for years. And one of those voices is Fred Krueger, who has recently shared a very strong opinion that everything as we know it in the financial system could face serious disruption. And this is not about fear, but about understanding the direction in which the world is moving. When someone like him talks about collapse, it does not mean everything disappears overnight, but it suggests that the current system may no longer be able to handle the pressure it is facing. To understand this idea, you first need to look at how the global financial system works today, because most people think money simply moves from one place to another instantly, but in reality, your international transactions are slow, expensive, and depend on outdated systems that were built decades ago. And even today, banks rely on systems like Swift, which often take days to complete a single transaction. And during this time, money is stuck in the system, creating inefficiency and risk. Now, imagine a world where billions and even trillions of dollars are moving every single day using such slow systems, and you begin to see where the pressure starts building. At the same time, governments around the world are printing more money than ever before. And while this may seem like a solution in the short term, it creates long term problems like inflation, loss of purchasing power, and instability in currencies. And when people start losing confidence in their own currency, that is when the system begins to crack. This is one of the main reasons why many analysts believe that we are moving toward a major financial shift, not necessarily a sudden crash, but a gradual breakdown of trust in traditional systems. This is where the conversation about XRP begins to enter the picture, because unlike traditional banking systems, XRP was designed to move money quickly, cheaply, and without the need for multiple intermediaries. And this is not just a theory, because the technology behind it, known as the XRP ledger, allows transactions to settle in seconds rather than days, and at a much lower cost compared to traditional systems. When you combine speed, efficiency, and low cost, you start to understand why some people believe this could be a key part of the future financial system. Fred Krueger's perspective is not just about, predicting collapse, but about identifying where the opportunity lies when such changes happen, because history shows that whenever there is a major shift in systems, new technologies rise to replace the old ones. And those who understand the change early are often the ones who benefit the most. This is why his statement about buying XRP is gaining attention, because it suggests that he sees value in its role during a time of financial transformation. However, it is important to understand that this is not a guaranteed outcome and the market is always uncertain. But what makes this discussion important is the direction of global finance, because we are already seeing signs of change with the rise of digital currencies, blockchain technology, and the increasing demand for faster and more efficient financial systems. And these are not small trends, but major shifts that could reshape the entire industry. As more institutions begin to explore blockchain based solutions, the idea of replacing or upgrading traditional systems becomes more realistic. And XRP is often mentioned in this conversation because of its focus on cross border payments, which is one of the biggest pain points in the current financial system. And if a solution can solve this problem effectively, it has the potential to gain significant adoptions. So when you hear statements like everything will collapse, it is not about panic, but about paying attention to the changes happening around you because the world of finance is evolving. And those who take the time to understand these changes may find themselves in a better position compared to those who ignore them. As we continue this discussion, it is important to clearly understand what is really meant by the idea that everything could collapse, because this statement is often misunderstood. And in reality, it is not about buildings falling or banks shutting down overnight, but about a slow and powerful shift where the current financial system begins to lose its strength, its trust, and its ability to function efficiently under growing pressure. And when someone like Fred Krueger talks about collapse, he is pointing toward deep structural weaknesses that have been building for many years. One of the biggest weaknesses in the current system is debt, because governments around the world are carrying massive amounts of debt that continue to grow every single year. And instead of reducing this burden, many countries are increasing spending while relying on printing more money to cover their obligations. And while this approach may keep the system running in the short term, it creates a dangerous long-term effect, where currencies begin to lose value, and people slowly start to feel that their money is not as strong as it used to be. This is not something that happens in a single moment, but rather a gradual erosion that becomes more visible over time. At the same time, banks are facing their own challenges because the traditional banking model depends heavily on trust. And once that trust begins to weaken, the entire system becomes fragile. And we have already seen moments in recent years where banks faced liquidity issues, delays in transactions, and rising concerns from customers. And while these situations were managed, they exposed how sensitive the system can be when pressure increases. Now, imagine a scenario where multiple stress points happen at the same time, and you begin to see why some analysts are warning about a larger breakdown. Another important factor is the speed of financial systems, because in today's digital world, people expect everything to happen instantly. But the reality is that global payments still move very slowly, especially when crossing borders. And this creates inefficiencies that cost businesses and individuals both time and money. And when a system cannot keep up with the speed of the modern world, it naturally starts to fall behind, and eventually it needs to be replaced or upgraded. This is a key part of the argument being made, because the current system is not built for the demands of today's global economy. There is also the issue of transparency, because many financial processes are complex and difficult for the average person to understand. And this lack of clarity can create uncertainty and reduce confidence, especially during times of economic stress. And when people do not fully trust the system, they begin to look for alternatives that offer more control and visibility. And this is where blockchain technology starts to gain attention, because it provides a level of transparency that traditional systems often lack. When you combine all of these factors, including rising debt, weakening trust, slow transaction speeds, and lack of transparency, you begin to see a clear picture of why some experts believe that the current system is not sustainable in the long run. And this does not mean that everything will stop working suddenly, but it suggests that the system may gradually lose its dominance as new technologies begin to take its place. This is exactly where the discussion returns to XRP, because its design directly addresses many of these weaknesses. And instead of relying on multiple intermediaries, XRP allows value to move directly between parties in a matter of seconds. And this is a major improvement compared to traditional systems that can take days to settle transactions. And not only is it faster, but it is also significantly cheaper, which makes it attractive for large scale financial operations. Fred Krueger's interest in XRP can be understood in this context, because if the current system is facing long term challenges, then solutions that offer speed, efficiency, and reliability become extremely valuable. And XRP is often positioned as one of those solutions, especially in the area of cross border payments, which is one of the most important parts of global finance. It is also important to note that large financial institutions are not ignoring these developments, because many banks and organizations are already exploring blockchain technology and digital assets as part of their future strategy. And this shows that the shift is not just a theory, but an ongoing process that is already happening behind the scenes. And as adoption increases, the role of efficient digital assets could become more significant. At this point, the idea of collapse becomes less about fear and more about transformation, because every major system in history has gone through periods of change, and those changes often create new opportunities for innovation and growth. And the key question is not whether change will happen, but how quickly it will happen and which technologies will lead the way. As we move deeper into this discussion, the focus now shifts to understanding why XRP is often highlighted as a strong candidate for the future of global finance, especially in a time when many believe the current system is under pressure. And to fully understand this, you need to look at what makes XRP different from most other digital assets, because not all cryptocurrencies are designed with the same purpose. And this is where a lot of confusion begins for new investors. XRP was not created to replace everyday money in the way some other cryptocurrencies aim to do, but instead it was designed to solve a very specific and very large problem, which is the movement of money across borders. And this is one of the most important functions in the global economy, because every day banks, businesses, and governments transfer huge amounts of value from one country to another. And the current system that handles these transactions is not only slow, but also expensive and complex, involving multiple intermediaries that increase both cost and risk. What makes XRP stand out is its ability to act as a bridge between different currencies, which means it can be used to quickly convert one currency into another without needing a direct trading pair. And this may sound simple, but it solves a major problem in global finance, because not all currencies are directly connected. And in many cases, banks need to go through multiple steps just to complete a single transaction. And each step adds time and cost. And this is exactly the inefficiency that XRP aims to remove. Another key feature of XRP is its speed, because transactions on the XRP ledger are completed in just a few seconds. And this is a major improvement compared to traditional systems that can take several days to settle. And in a world where time is extremely valuable, this kind of speed can make a significant difference, especially for businesses that rely on fast cash flow to operate efficiently. When money moves faster, it allows companies to use their capital more effectively, which can lead to better overall performance. Cost is another important factor, because traditional cross border payments often involve high fees due to the number of intermediaries involved. And these costs can add up quickly, especially for large transactions. But well, with XRP, the transaction fees are extremely low, making it a more efficient option for moving value at scale. And this is one of the reasons why it is being considered by institutions that are looking to reduce operational costs while improving performance. Security and reliability also play a major role in this conversation, because financial systems must be stable and trustworthy in order to be widely adopted. And the XRP ledger has been operating for many years with a strong track record handling transactions without major disruptions. And this level of reliability is important when you are dealing with large amounts of money and institutional use cases. It is also worth mentioning that XRP does not rely on mining like some other cryptocurrencies, which means it is more energy efficient. And in today's world, where sustainability is becoming increasingly important, this can be seen as an advantage, especially for organizations that are looking to reduce their environmental impact while adopting new technologies. Now, when you connect all of these features together, including speed, low cost, efficiency, and reliability, you begin to understand why XRP is often positioned as a solution for the future of payments. And this is likely what investors like Fred Krueger are focusing on, because if the financial system is indeed moving toward a more digital and efficient model, then assets that support that transition could become very valuable over time. However, it is important to keep a balanced perspective, because while XRP has strong advantages, it also faces challenges, including regulatory uncertainty and competition from other digital assets and technologies. And these factors can influence its adoption and market performance. And this is why it is important for investors to stay informed and consider both the potential benefits and the risks. The growing interest in digital assets is not happening in isolation, because governments and central banks are also exploring their own digital currencies known as CBDCs. And this adds another layer to the conversation, because the future financial system may include a combination of different technologies working together. And in such a system, assets like XRP could play a supporting role by providing liquidity and enabling fast transactions between different currencies. As more discussions take place around upgrading the global financial system, the importance of efficient payment solutions becomes more clear. And XRP continues to be part of that conversation, not because of hype, but because of its specific use case, and the problem it is trying to solve. And this is what separates it from many other digital assets that do not have a clearly defined purpose. At this stage, the idea that everything could collapse begins to look more like a transition from an old system to a new one. And in every transition, there are winners and losers. And the key for investors is to identify which technologies are most likely to succeed in the long run. And this is where careful analysis becomes more important than emotion or hype. As we move forward, the most important question now becomes whether all of this discussion around XRP is actually supported by real world adoption, or if it is still mostly driven by speculation. Because in any financial shift, the difference between theory and real implementation is what truly matters. And this is where institutions, banks, and governments come into focus, because they are the ones who control large portions of global financial activity, and their decisions play a major role in shaping the future of money. Over the past few years, there has been a noticeable change in how institutions view blockchain technology, because what was once seen as experimental or risky is now being studied and tested in serious ways. And many financial organizations are actively exploring how distributed ledger technology can improve their operations, especially in areas like cross-border payments, settlement systems, and liquidity management. And this shift in attitude is important because it shows that the conversation is moving beyond theory and into practical use. One of the key reasons institutions are paying attention to solutions like XRP is because of the inefficiencies in the current system. And large financial organizations deal with massive transaction volumes every day, which means even small improvements in speed and cost can lead to significant benefits over time. And when a technology offers faster settlement and lower fees, it naturally becomes attractive for institutions that are looking to optimize their processes and stay competitive in a rapidly evolving market. There have already been cases where financial institutions have partnered with blockchain based companies to test new payment solutions. And while not all of these initiatives directly use XRP, they highlight a broader trend toward modernization. And within this trend, XRP is often discussed because of its specific focus on liquidity and cross border transactions. And this is an area where traditional systems struggle the most. Another important factor is regulatory clarity, because institutions cannot fully commit to any digital asset, yeah, without clear rules and guidelines. And this has been one of the biggest challenges for XRP, as regulatory uncertainty has affected its growth and adoption in the past. But at the same time, progress is being made in different parts of the world where regulators are starting to create frameworks for digital assets. And this is gradually reducing uncertainty and opening the door for wider institutional involvement. Governments are also playing a significant role in this transition, because many central banks are working on their own digital currencies known as CBDCs. And these digital currencies are designed to modernize the financial system while maintaining control over monetary policy. And while CBDCs may not replace all existing systems, they are a clear sign that the future of money is becoming more digital. And in such an environment, technologies that support fast and efficient transactions could become essential. In this evolving landscape, XRP is often positioned as a bridge that can connect different financial systems, including traditional banking networks and emerging digital currencies. And this is a powerful concept, because the future financial system may not be built on a single technology, but rather a combination of systems that need to work together seamlessly. And interoperability becomes a key requirement. And this is where XRP's design can offer value. However, it is important to remain realistic, because adoption at the institutional level does not happen overnight, and financial systems are complex, highly regulated, and resistant to rapid change. And even if a technology is clear, it was clearly better. It's still needs time to be tested, approved, and integrated into existing infrastructure. And this process can take years, which means that any expectations of immediate transformation should be approached with caution. At the same time, competition in this space is increasing, because many other blockchain projects are also aiming to solve similar problems, and institutions are likely to explore multiple options before committing to a specific solution. And this means that XRP is not guaranteed to dominate the market, but it does have a strong position due to its focus and established presence in the payment sector. What makes this situation interesting is that we are already seeing small steps toward change, even if the full transformation has not yet occurred. And these steps include pilot programs, partnerships, and research initiatives that indicate a growing interest in blockchain based solutions. And while these developments may not always make headlines, they are important signals of a larger shift that is taking place behind the scenes. When you connect this back to the idea of a collapsing system, it becomes clear that the transition is already in progress. And rather than a sudden breakdown, it is more like a gradual replacement of outdated systems with more efficient technologies. And this is how most major changes happen in the real world: slowly at first, and then more rapidly as adoption increases. For investors and observers, the key takeaway is to focus on real world progress rather than hype, because long term success is usually driven by actual use cases and adoption, not just speculation. And this is why the role of institutions is so important, because their involvement can provide a level of validation that goes beyond market sentiment. As we reach the final part of this discussion, everything now comes down to one central question, which is whether buying XRP in this current environment actually makes sense, especially when there is so much noise, so many, opinions, and so many bold predictions in the market. And to answer this properly, it is important to step back and look at the full picture rather than focusing on short term excitement or fear, because real financial decisions should always be based on understanding, patience, and a clear view of both opportunity and risk.